It's with pleasure that I announce the first episode of Test of Times. And who we talk about today? We talk about the legendary Vinoo Mankad. Vinoo Mankad was former India captain, was a great cricketer who was known for his passion, for his courage. And and what a pleasure it is that I have with me Bhash Mankad with me to discuss, talk about the legacy of the legendary Vinoo Mankad. I welcome Bhash Mankad on the show. Bhash is a very good friend of mine.
Thank
He
you.
is he's a lawyer by profession, but an avid cricket fan. And as far as I know him, he loves to talk about cricket day in and day out. Welcome, Bas, on the show. And I hope everybody is fine in India and you are doing perfectly fine amidst all the difficulties.
Yes, thank you so much, Yashasvi. Thank you very much. I'm so glad, that you've started this show because, I hate to sort of, categorize cricket fans into generations, but I mean, here, everyone here after 5 years, I think, we always skip a generation. But someone like you, particularly having the zeal to sort of start this show on cricketing legends, because of course, Mr. Vinoo Mankad was beyond my generation also, is something that is very refreshing. And I just like to state one thing, why it is important. Uh, so when Virendra Sehwag and Rahul Dravid had broken Vinoo Mankad and Pankaj Roy's record, which stood the long-standing record of the opening partnership of India, you and he said Mankad who? So you can imagine that if a Virendra Sehwag having played cricket for India was not even aware of who was Vinoo Mankad. I think this is a very refreshing change, and there are a lot of legends, of course, in Indian cricket and in world cricket, who probably not got their due. Part of it is because of the fact that we don't have visuals of it. I mean, they lived in an era
Correct.
when in India we had radio, so we could not visualize watching. So that's been fortunate. So I am honored and privileged to be a part of the show, and also my best wishes to you. So
Thank you
thank
very
you very
much.
much for
Thank you very
having me.
much, Bas. And as you said, it is very important for a generation to know about these legends because this is where it all started from. Because if they weren't there, many other cricketers who have grown on to become great wouldn't have actually existed. So as we start the show, I would just want you to tell me the initial stories of Vinu Mankad. You actually share the same surname, so please tell us something about Vinu Mankad, what you heard from your grandfather.
So Vinod Mankad was born in Navanagar, as in modern day Jamnagar. He was about 3 years older to my grandfather, but they lived in the same house because that time, obviously in India, joint families were the norm. And there he was just a natural at cricket. I mean, of course, they started playing at the ground in Jamnagar and in Navanagar at that point of time. And it was in fact in 1937 when he was about 20 years old that Lord Tennyson's team had come to India, and there were five unofficial tests played. And that is when, as a young 20-year-old boy, his talent was first recognized as an all-rounder. I think, if I'm not mistaken, he had topped the batting and bowling averages. He had averaged about 62 with the bat and 14 or 15 with the ball. And Lord Tennyson's team, because we were still not independent at that time as a nation.
Yes.
So at that time, that was when his talent was first seen. And of course, as a young 20-year-old, he was on the cusp of great things. But unfortunately, then the Second World War happened, and he wouldn't play a test match in 46, which is a very unfortunate time. He was unfortunately lost to the war.
So, like you mentioned the World War, Second World War. He played 44 Test matches, and he played until the age of 42. Vinu Mankad played until the age of 42. That's like wow, I have played a lot, but only 44 Tests. Do you still feel if there wasn't World War II, He could have made a debut way earlier, maybe in 43 or maybe 42 or 43, and went on even to play more tests.
Yes, absolutely. Unfortunately, at that point of time, we didn't have so many test matches. You who had to go, I don't even think, of course, think people. I think if I'm not mistaken, you had to go to by ship
Yes,
to England
correct.
for for the first few tours that So which was it was demanding. There were no modern aircraft where you could just fly
Correct.
down from one city to another, and he was definitely in your 20s. I mean, any cricketer who starts out, whether you see any day modern day greats or the previous, it's the 20s where you are at the peak of your skill. And
Correct.
then for a batsman, sometime between 27 to 33 is when you sort of are, and then after 34 or 35, the reflexes slightly decline. And you obviously are not at the peak of your prowess. So yes, I mean, I'm pretty sure that for someone like him, 9 years is a long time. And if I were to give an analogy, it's we've all seen a Virat Kohli or a Rohit
Correct.
Sharma starting off
Hmm.
at the age of 20, 21. We saw them fine, and if they were to lose 8 or 9 years, or even a Sachin Tendulkar for that matter, the
Correct.
90s, where he was in his 20s,
Hmm.
that was his peak of his prowess. If Sachin was 21, 20 at the age 93,
Hmm.
2002. So
Correct.
93
Yes.
to 2002 was still NatWest. We
Hmm.
did the NatWest final, which I think
Hmm.
was one of the most significant matches where we could win a match without Sachin.
Hmm.
But between
Yes.
93 to 2002, it was all Sachin Tendulkar. If
Correct.
he was out,
Hmm.
more often than not, so you can just, it's a perfect analogy, right? If Sachin
Yes.
Tendulkar started in 2002, he wouldn't be the Sachin Tendulkar that we all know.
Hmm.
So I think, and of course, in tests and in ODI. But yeah, so that's I think a fair analogy to give. So you know, it is unfortunate, but I mean, of course, these are things that none of us can sort of anticipate. Unfortunately, but all I can say is he was the first genuine all-rounder that India had. So there can be
As
no debate on that.
as you said this line, I'll get to that point. First genuine all-rounder. Vinoo Mankad was the first Indian to have opened the innings with both the bat and the ball. And also he was the first Indian to take score 1,000 runs and take 100 wickets. Now what legacy he had at that point of time when India only played 4 to 5 test matches in a year. Vinuman, I'll give you one interesting thing, about Jamnagar, as he said, about Gujarat. That area, which is modern day Saurashtra now, if I'm not wrong, but please correct me if I'm wrong, uh, has given India a lot of left arm bowlers, starting with the great Vinu Mankad. We got Karsan Gavri, we got Salim Durrani. Salim Durrani was another legend. And now, when we see Jaidev Unadkat, Ravi Jadeja, and even for the same fact, now we see Chetan Sakaria. So, a lot of left armers. So, it must be
Yes.
something in Jamnagar that, a lot of left armers coming in. But as we're deviating a little bit, talking about
Correct.
talking about the great Vinu Mankad, first person to be on the honors board in Lords in both, by scoring both 100 runs and taking 5 wickets. What was it? What was it actually to be Vinu Mankad? Having so much, so much burden. You're actually coming in in a new country which has just gained independence. What it was for him, like what used to be his ideology, if you could say.
So what I have heard from, of course, my grandfather and other relatives who have had the, privilege to met him and just lived with him. The one thing is that he was a very, very fearless cricketer. I mean, there was no challenge that he would not take up. And he was extremely resilient. So, if you know, I mean, of course, everyone knows the famous tests of 1952 of Lords, where he practically spent about uh, 18 and a half hours of the total 24 hours of the match on the field, whether it was bowling or batting. So you can imagine that he was someone that who never was shy of a challenge, of taking up a challenge. I think that is one thing that is something that we can sort of imbibe. I if I were to give an example, the modern day cricketer, unfortunately, we are now in an era of specialists.
Correct.
One of our modern veins of Indian cricket is that we have not yet produced, whether after Kapil Dev, we haven't yet produced a genuine test all-rounder.
Correct.
And that I
Yes.
think is something that you know the batsmen of today's generation, they don't bowl. I mean, they're very comfortable in their comfort zone. This is not a criticism. This is just that we're now moving in an era of specialist cricket. So that's, you realize the enormity of a Vinoo Mankad or a Kapil Dev or their greatness due to the fact that how difficult it would be to bat as an opening batsman, have the technique to face a Ray Linwell or an like Betzer or Truman or Harold Lavo, those kind of bowlers, and then to bowl slow left arm and sort of open the bowling. So
Mm.
that's something you need a lot of grit, and you need a lot of tenacity. I think that is something that you could sort of attribute. And of course, Kapil Dev the same, but Kapil Dev again was still cushioned to some extent of batting at number 7 and 8. And one interesting fact of Vinod Mankad is that
I
very interesting. He was never shy of taking up, a challenge. So I think that is something that is should be remembered as well.
correct. Yes. And it is a big thing that only two Indian cricketers have only opened the innings with the bat and the ball. That is one legendary Vinu Mankad, and the other was Manoj Prabhakar. Nobody else has done this. And okay, now we are talking about him. We cannot forget one test, 1952 four-test match, Chennai. And they say that English players are not very good players of left arm spin. Vinu Mankad had done that day. 8 for 52 in our inaugural test victory. For a man who has played a lot of test match, he would be like, my goodness, we haven't won a test match. India has played 25 test matches and haven't won anything. Vinu Mankad comes, rips through the English batting, then Paulie Umrigar and Pankaj Roy score century, and in the next innings, and Ghulam Ahmed and Vinu Mankad share 4 wickets, and that's it. India with their first Test match in in Chennai. So, what do you actually think? What actually went through that first Test
So
victory?
heard and read about that match is that in fact that was surprisingly not a very spin friendly pitch.
Hmm.
And I think one of the prominent journalists then had said that after that match had said that Vinod Mankad was probably standalone the best low left arm spinner in the world. As
Yeah.
a spinner,
Hmm.
forget about his batting skill. As a slow left arm spinner, he was probably one of the best in the world at that time. It's not an easy skill to possess, I
Correct.
mean, left arm
Hmm.
spinners to rip it, it's not something that it's not an easy skill to
Hmm.
have. And there's always a charm. Like for me, if you were to give a modern day example, because, we're sophisticated, a wicket will always in the World Cup match. We'll always remember it. There's this like thing that, I mean, unfortunately we don't have footage of the match, but apparently he did it. He was at the peak of his progress. I mean, we have to
Yeah,
concede at
definitely.
that point of time. Although he was 35 years old, he
Hmm.
was still at the peak of his progress, and that were his best years of 1952. And on a not a very helpful track to take 12 wickets against an English team. That's something which is absolutely memorable. But Yashasvi, I must add,
Yeah.
not many people know about this. So there is a backstory of the 1952 Lord's Test.
Sure.
So what had happened is
Just
that
1 second,
that
boss.
time
Just a moment.
professional.
Just a moment. This series is for the backstories. Everybody would love to hear a backstory, and this is our backstory. But please, the backstory of this episode.
Yes. So this is with regard to the Lord's Test of
Yeah.
1952
Mhm.
that I'm going to speak about.
Yes, definitely.
So what had happened is that prior to selection of India's team for the tour of 1952 in England, C.K. Naidu was then the chairman of selectors, and C.K. Naidu was again a legend in his own right. He had at the time prior to the team being picked, Vinoo Mankad had gone up to C.K. Naidu and requested him that if he was assuring him of a spot in the side, he would not take up a contract with in county cricket in England because let's face it, that time he had a family
Yeah.
to fend for, and money was I mean, although money was never a consideration to play for the country, but money was definitely important to have your children. I mean,
Yeah.
he had responsibilities, and of course, to survive, there was no other endorsements in that area. TV was practically not there. There was only radio. So cricketers did have a hard time with income. So what Vinny Mankad had requested him is if he was assuring, he would not take up the contract. And C.K. Naidu uh, had told him very clearly that he would not give any such assurances, and he said he was free to choose. So Vinny Mankad took his word, and he was not picked in the side. And C.K. Naidu that time famously remarked that there is no problem at all. We can produce a dozen Vinny Mankads. So that was the famous remark of C.K. Naidu. Uh, 1952 Indian team goes to England. The first Test match was thrashed, humiliated, and by an innings. And that time, the Indian team manager sent a telegram in those days and an SOS call that he needed Vinoo Mankad to play in the team. And by that time, he was doing pretty well in county cricket too.
Yes.
So it's something like, if I were to give an example, it's like Hanuma Vihari right now, giving up the IPL. This is not, of course,
Yeah.
but Hanuma Vihari right now is in England, owning up his for the World Test Championship. Of course, not a
Yes.
like by like example, but something like that. You have the lure. So then and then I mean, of course, he arrived in at the nth moment, nth hour prior to the Test match, and that's when he cracked 73 runs in the first innings, took 5 wickets, uh, and another he cracked 184 in less than 5 hours. So in less than 5 hours of play, to crack 184 runs is almost a Sehwagian effort. I mean,
Yes.
it is equivalent to batting like Sehwag on at that time on those pitches in England. It's something that it may be called one of the greatest Test innings for at that point of time, at least, because unfortunately we don't have videos of that. But to crack 184 in a team of 378, although we went on to lose the Test match, I mean his overall end figures was he had clocked 97 overs, he had scored a total of 72 or 184, about 256 odd runs, and taken 5 wickets. I don't think that feat has ever been, I don't think even Kapil Dev, for that
Yes.
matter, has been ever replicated. That's a feat unlikely to be replicated.
Correct.
So
So,
that's the story of it.
so this was an intriguing story. Someone like C.K. Naidu going and telling that we can produce dozen of Vinu Mankad, and at the end he has to say, okay, I cannot. There's only one Vinu Mankad.
Like one of the British press did needle seek, and I do, and they said that show us one Vinoo Mankad. So of course, I mean that was famous words, which unfortunately, C.K. Naidu had to sort of be a little
He
peevish and embarrassed about that. But
he had to
that's how
take
it
back
goes,
his
and
words.
that was the first instance. Yeah, of course. I mean, that was the first instance of administrator and a player having a skirmish. Unfortunately, right now in modern days, that's if you see W.V. Raman, the sacking and all that,
Yeah.
it's more common these days. But at that time, it was a furor because
Correct.
there was never such. I mean, there were only yes men, right? He was
Yes.
not the proverbial yes man.
Now let's just keep continuing. This is a fantastic thing which we are doing. At 35 years of age, he bamboozles English batting order, and at the age of 39, when cricketers start thinking of the retirement, he plays against New Zealand, and with Pankaj Roy, he scores 413. It still stands as an Indian record because in 2006, agonizingly close came. Virender Sehwag and Rahul Dravid to just lose out by 3 runs. They had a partnership of 410, and
Yes.
it was eventually broken by Neil Mackenzie and Graham Smith in 2008 when they had a partnership of
Yes.
500 plus runs.
Yes.
39 years of age, you're almost on the brink of retirement. You've had almost
Absolutely.
everything. You go on to have a partnership of 413 with another greatest openers of all times, Pankaj Roy, and you scored 231 runs. It, it is still it was a record for a long period of time until Sunil Gavaskar broke it in 1970s. It was a
Yes.
Herculean effort, and if I have to think now, I'm like, my goodness, we idolize Sachin, we idolize Mahendra Singh Dhoni, but Vinoo Mankad was way too great in his own rights.
Absolutely. That's where the when we're talking about all rounders. So in 2010, Cricket Info had started this poll of a greatest all-time 11 of
Yes.
India, and there were only four people who were the unanimous choice. Of course, the famous ones being Sachin, Sunil Gavaskar, and Kapil Dev. But the fourth name was Vinoo Mankad. So in that era, to
Hmm.
have that kind of excellence of
Yes.
in batting and in bowling, is to Brazilian that you have to conjure up these feats. So that's something that he was just it is just phenomenal. I mean, to in those times to have that kind of partnership and of course to score 231 runs at that time. These were not the bats at that time were not even close to these modern bats. They just miss it, just fly out of the
Correct.
so I think that's something that individual that Vinod Mankad has, I mean, that can be replicated by others, whether in batting and in bowling, barring a Kapil Dev. So, of
Correct.
course, that's something that we have to. So
Now
that's it. That's why he has been a legend
now you have
in
told us
bowling.
so many good stories. So you have told us about some brilliant facts, CK Naidu and Mankad Fika. So now let's get to one point of topic which is actually people are very controversial about. I'm not going to call it by the name of Mankad. I will call it run out. A player setting off, a non-striker setting off quickly, we'll call it a run out. I personally feel something which is there in the rule books should be followed, and it is something, it is not actually wrong. It's not it's everything in the rules, and if it's in the rules it is fair. And just remembering Vinu Mankad, it was 1946-47, 47-48, mind you, when he actually caught Bill Brown, who is backing off too early. He ran him out, and that started a lot of things. Don Bradman said it famously that it's no harm. If the batsman is backing off very quickly, the bowler is in his own right to run him out. And this is what every most of us think is right. But I would like to know your comments on this. What do you feel? And I personally feel it is very insulting to say that what a great man did is not right in the spirit of the game. Someone who has played with all courage and passion, saying something about him is very disrespectful.
No, absolutely. I can't agree more. The spirit of the game argument for me is a very strange argument. First of all, I mean, I'll get to the incident later. I mean, my view of it is that we have players, unfortunately, in the modern day cameras, claiming catches which are clearly have touched the ground. You
Yes.
have players not walking. I mean, when DRS is exhausted of a big nick,
Hmm.
or I mean, there can. So if such strict standards, a no ball where a bowler has exceeded the crease by an inch is a no ball and a free hit.
Hmm.
And at that point of time, it's a game for the batsman.
Correct.
And now we are talking about a fact where someone is deliberately taking an unfair advantage
Hmm.
by taking a few yards. In fact, cricket we all know is a game. It can be a game of inches. It can decide a match. And in T20 cricket, as Sean Pollock famously remarked in the 2007 World Cup, every ball is an event.
Correct.
So to have that advantage of running when a bowler is in the crease is absolutely against the spirit of the game. There can be no argument on that. And coming to that incident, I think what had happened is that there are a lot of people who forget. I'm for one of the view that a batsman you should not be even warned. I mean, there is no.
Yeah.
If you are stumped,
Hmm.
right, you're out of the crease and you're stumped. The
Yes.
wicketkeeper doesn't give you a warning. Oh, you're trying to hit. It's the
Hmm.
same logic.
Hmm.
In fact, Vinoo Mankad had warned Bill Brown
Yes.
prior to
Hmm.
that for backing up, and it was only when he saw him, do it multiple times that he was a slow left-arm spinner. He was not even a pace bowler. You can imagine as a slow left-arm spinner with a small run-up if someone is backing up.
Hmm.
It's absolutely against the rules of the game. So at that point of time, of course, the famous Australian media had a go at him,
Hmm.
and of course, created a furor that he was not in the spirit of the game, and it's absolutely against the spirit of the game, and this is completely wrong, and the Indians are not playing in the spirit of the game. We even hear it even as of now
Yes, definitely.
these days. But what I see the greatness of Mr. Vinoo Mankad is that a lot of people forget that despite that incident, he went on to score notch two other hundreds. He scored a hundred in MCG,
Yes.
and in I think the last tournament he actually scored two centuries after that. It didn't affect his performance. The
Yes.
Australians can needle you,
Hmm.
but the fact that it brings out the best in you, like what probably Virat Kohli had emulated in the 2014
Yes.
series
Yes.
where Mitchell Johnson and him had a sort of tape. It brings out the best in you. I think that is what I think the first time was what Vinoo Mankad did, right? That time there was the Indian. Right now we have our Indian media also, of course, who stands up for our player. But that time our media was almost minuscule. We didn't have that kind of
Yeah, we didn't have
presence.
anything. We were just, we were just independent at that point of time. We had just gained independence. So, not a lot.
Exactly.
We had just gained independence. So, not a lot of things were there with us. Yes, definitely.
So he stood by what his actions were, and he scored 200 and gave it back to the Aussies in the best way that by showing them who's the boss on the field. So I think that's the best way that he could handle it, and yeah,
Yes.
that's the legend of Vinoo Mankad. I mean, the fact that he didn't it didn't affect his game. I think that is what is the most important. And there's one small other thing that I wanted to say is that my uncle, I think Bhash Mankad, had actually met Bill Brown, and
Hmm.
not very many people know about this. That it was Bill Brown himself who had conceded that he was perfectly right. I mean, I was trying to act cheeky and sort of run, and it's, I think more and more people now commentators where don't even think there should be any warning for the batsman. So,
Bash, we lost you for a bit. Could you just repeat the last line? That would be really helpful for us. If you could just repeat the last line, what you said.
so I just think that more and more commentators in the IPL are actually calling out non-strikers taking these few yards while the bowler is in his bowling stride runner. So I think now the trend is, and a lot of people do agree, a lot of
Yeah.
experts do agree that this is completely against the spirit and it should be termed as a run out,
Hmm.
as any other run out it
Right.
is, and it is completely against the spirit of the game. So that's something that I mean, it should never be. There should never be a debate on this at all.
Yes.
And I think the
Definitely.
ICC has also recognized this and has tweaked its rule accordingly, where it's legitimate to run someone. So I think that's should be the final word. Yeah.
So we had a brilliant discussion with Mr. Mankad about the legendary Vinoo Mankad. Vinoo Mankad, in his own rights, as I said, was a legend, known for his passion, known for his courage, and reading so much about him, knowing so much about him from Mr. Bhash Mankad, it was a pleasure having him on the show. And I hope we continue and we keep and continue entertaining you guys with more and more interesting stories about our yesteryear heroes. And I'll just ask Vas Mankad for his final words, how he enjoyed the show. Vas, any last words about the show, and did you enjoy it?
Absolutely. It's just it is a great pleasure. Of course, when I start talking about cricket with you and when we chat about cricket,
Yes.
we lose the sense of time. So I think that's we can talk for hours on end about whether it be Mankad or anything about the game of cricket, the game that we love and so passionate about. So yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure, and let's hope now this nightmare that of this COVID pandemic ends soon. I mean, we need some cricket very soon. Some test
Yes.
cricket is coming our way in June. Let's hope India does well, and we have this World Test Championship that we are eagerly looking forward to. And let's hope we can win that, which would be a great tribute because Test cricket is something that I've always rated Test cricket as the pinnacle of cricket, and
Yes.
as it would not be fair, it would be fair to state Vinoo Mankad was the first genuine all-rounder that India had in Test cricket. Kapil Dev being the second. Barring that, it's difficult to name genuine all-rounders. So I think for us to show ourselves as a team that I think that can be a team to beat the future. I think we need to focus on that. And what was most refreshing about the Brisbane Test win, we need to speak about that, of course, because it's new in our memory, is the value of an all-round talent. The
Correct.
Sundar and Thakur partnership
Yes.
really changed the game.
Brilliant.
To be honest, I remember sending a message on WhatsApp to my friend when Pant got out that I think it's game over. I think we died our best and I think it's over. But it's the all-round skills that ultimately matter, and that is where we remember a Washington Sundar. Of course, no discredit. I mean, Pant has been just phenomenal, but the fact is that's where all-rounders matter in the game. They bring so much more, and we never thought of how Sundar and Thakur's all-round skills would sort of be so helpful to us. And I think that's the last test that we played in foreign soil, and that's a reference point for us as to how important genuine all-rounders can be.
Definitely, that was a brilliant test for us. The Brisbane test, the Cabot oil was breached, and that was actually a brilliant tribute to everybody who has played cricket for India. Going to Australia, defeating them twice in a row, it was fantastic. So, with this, we come to end of our first episode of Test of Times, and it was a pleasure bringing to you the stories of great cricketers, and I hope we keep entertaining you with such stories, more stories. We'll be back soon. Until then, keep watching, stay safe, and thank you very much for joining in. Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers.